Francisco recovering from his stroke, but the sun was not sufficient for him there because there was a big mountain range. The sun wouldn't come up until 11 o'clock in the morning. Just a little while, an hour or two, and then the clouds from the ocean would cover the sun again. So Prabhupada was not recovering well there, and he made a firm decision that he would return to India. So today, Prabhupada will go from San Francisco to a short stop in New York City, then London, then Moscow, and finally to Delhi. And we want to invite the Russian devotees who have come here with Andikini Mataji. There's going to be some translation today. Praise Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So while Prabhupada was at the Paradiso in Stinson Beach, because of the winding road to go up the mountains, he couldn't come down to the temple. So one or two devotees would come to see Prabhupada. And Prabhupada decided that so many devotees were waiting for initiation by that time that he was going to perform the initiations at Stinson Beach. Prabhupada said that he would initiate the new followers in San Francisco and asked that they come one at a time and stay overnight. Without performing any fire ceremonies, he simply talked with each new person, asking him to follow the 4 rules and chant 16 rounds a day. When the follower promised, Prabhupada initiated him, sitting on the bed, while the disciple sat before him on the floor. Prabhupada would chant quietly on the disciple's beads, and then give him or her a spiritual name. One day, one of the new candidates for initiation came in very nervously and bowed down before Prabhupada. The boy didn't get up. "You can get up now," Prabhupada said. "So you want to be initiated?" The boy said yes and began chanting, not knowing what else to say. "I'll chant on your beads," Prabhupada said. After chanting for 10 minutes, he returned them, saying, "Your name is Aniruddha." "What does that mean?" the boy asked. "He's the grandson of Krishna. Do you have any questions?" Aniruddha couldn't think of anything. He had already forgotten his name, and Prabhupada said he could go. Later, Prabhupada called for Aniruddha, but Aniruddha didn't know that it was his name being called. "Aniruddha," Kirtananda said and looked at him. "Swamiji is calling you." Another boy who came out received the name Uddhava. Just a minute. The next day, as Prabhupada was sitting in the yard, he called, "Kirtananda, Upendra, Uddhava." He wanted to read them a verse he had encountered while studying Srimad Bhagavatam. Kirtananda and Upendra came and sat at Prabhupada's feet. "Oh, where is Uddhava?" Prabhupada asked. Upendra told him that Uddhava had gone up to the hills to look at the cows and chant to them. Upendra thought that Swamiji would be pleased to hear that his new disciple had climbed the hills just to chant to the cows. And Prabhupada shook his head unhappily. Restlessness. He had wanted the new boy to hear the verse. So this would also often happen when you were in the personal association and this personal service of Srila Prabhupada. You had to be there at your post at all times. So because Uddhava was just going to be there one night and one day, it was to be expected he would stay close to Prabhupada so he could get as much association as possible. The devotees, even Prabhupada's secretary, they would find it difficult to get their rounds chanted because they were so busy doing the services for Prabhupada. And one time a devotee, he went for a japa walk to the Krishna Balaram tree. And naturally Prabhupada called for him. And he was quite displeased to hear that he had left his post just to go for a japa walk. So this is the sacrifices that the cooks, the secretaries, the servants had to accept if they were going to be close to Srila Prabhupada. They had to be right there, ready for Prabhupada to ring that bell, to call them, to do the services that he required. So this is the sloka. This sloka was when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would come before Lord Jagannath on the Rath Yatra cart, he would chant this beautiful sloka. It comes from the Mukundamala. Jayati Jayati Devo Devaki Nandana So Jayati Jayati Krishna Vishnu Vansi Pradipa Jayati Jayati Mega Shyamala Komalango Jayati Jayati Prithvi Varanasho Mukunda. Prabhupada gave the translation. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as the son of Devaki. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the light of the Vrishni dynasty. That's the Vrishni Vansa Pradeep. That's when we offer Pradeep. So Sri Krishna is the light of that dynasty. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose bodily luster is like that of a new cloud, and whose body is as soft as lotus flowers. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who walks on the planet Earth to deliver the world from the scorn of demons, and who can offer liberation to everyone. After repeating the Sanskrit and the translation, he told them they could return to their duties. So this was the benefits of being close to Srila Prabhupada, as Prabhupada would be doing his translations or simply reading his books. Wonderful, wonderful slokas and realizations Prabhupada would share with the people, the devotees close to him. So later this particular sloka appeared in Chaitanya Charitamrita when Srila Prabhupada was translating that book, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing before Lord Jagannath at Rath Yatra. Prabhupada told Kirtanananda he had definitely decided to go to India via New York as soon as possible. Kirtanananda packed Swamiji's things and drove Swamiji down to San Francisco to spend the night at the temple. They would leave the next morning. The temple and even Prabhupada's apartment were very hectic that night, with many devotees and guests wanting to see Prabhupada and dozens of people wanting initiation. When Kirtanananda advised Prabhupada not to exert himself by going down for the evening program, Prabhupada insisted on at least going and sitting during the kirtan. So Prabhupada would often make snap decisions like this. Also when Prabhupada was ill here in India during his final pastimes, he had gone to Rishikesh to stay at a very nice house there on the Ganga. And suddenly one night he called his servant, Bhakti Saraswami, and said, I want to leave immediately, I want to go back to Vrindavan. They packed up, that night they came back. Unexpectedly Prabhupada showed up here in Vrindavan. So again, Prabhupada, although he was comfortably there, he said there was nothing to complain about the beautiful bungalow or home that he had been staying in because of the lack of sunlight. He wasn't able to get he wasn't able to recover as he had hoped to. So therefore, overnight, he drove there, and Prabhupada was going to spend that last night there with the devotees. When he entered the storefront, the devotees immediately stopped their kirtan, dropping down to offer obeisances. There was a hush. He commanded a new reverence. This might be the last time they would see him. They watched him during the kirtan as he played his kartals, singing with them for the last time. The uninitiated wanted to accept him as their spiritual master tonight, before it was too late. So at this time in ISKCON, Prabhupada was personally performing all of the initiations, one-on-one. Sometimes he would have group initiations. But Prabhupada would personally chant on the beads of the devotees. He would choose the names, and normally there would be a fire sacrifice, but in this circumstance he said that he told the devotees that next time there's a fire sacrifice, you sit in that, because the Supreme Lord, the Vaishnavas, the spiritual master, and the fire should all be witnesses to the vows that we take at the time of initiation, that we follow the 4 regulative principles, and that we chant minimum 16 rounds every day. So now they didn't know if Prabhupada was going to return from India, because he was on the verge of leaving his body practically when he had the stroke. So those devotees, or those aspiring devotees who were there at the San Francisco temple, they were very anxious to get initiation before he went back to India. Srila Prabhupada asked for the microphone. No one had expected him to speak. Kirtanananda, the only person in a position to restrain him, said nothing and sat before him like the others, submissive and expectant. Prabhupada spoke quietly about his mission. Under the order of his spiritual master, he was bringing Lord Chaitanya's movement to America, and Krishna had kindly sent him so many sincere souls. I have a few children in India from my family days, he said, but you are my real children. Now I am going to India for a little while. So here Prabhupada was referring to his disciples and his followers as his children. Sometimes he would refer to them as his fathers and mothers because they retained such good care of him. Everyone fixed his attention on Swamiji as he sat before them, leaning against the madras-covered wall. In this picture, the madras is brought down. Speaking softly. See, most of these pictures, we have an archive of 19,930 photos of Srila Prabhupada. And to try to find the right photo, it takes all week. So the closest I could find was the madras to the side of Srila Prabhupada here. Suddenly the door opened, and Rabindra Swarup unhappily entered. Rabindra Swarup was one of the first initiates for 26 2nd Avenue. And he had followed Prabhupada to San Francisco and stayed there, but he was not following the principles. He was off different places, enjoying the music at the ballrooms and mixing with the hippies. So now suddenly on this last night when Prabhupada is here, Rabindra Swarup reappears in the temple. Everyone knew that Rabindra Swarup wanted to leave Krishna consciousness. He hadn't taken his initiation vows seriously. He wanted to move on. He didn't want a spiritual master anymore. The other devotees had discouraged him, but he had persisted. They were incredulous. How could he do such a thing on the night before Swamiji's departure? So, if you care to, there are other devotees who have now written their memoirs, such as Yamuna Devi. She describes from her perspective what happened, what she was feeling when Rabindra Swarup suddenly made his appearance on this last night. Rabindra Swarup fell to the, this is not the Rabindra Swarup that's now actively serving in our ISKCON society. That Rabindra Swarup, Bill Deadweiler, and his wonderful wife Sudamini, he was a GBC, he led the Philadelphia Temple for many years. So after Rabindra Swarup left the Association of Devotees, in 1971, Srila Prabhupada initiated a new devotee by the name of Rabindranath Swarup. So there are two different Rabindranath Swarups in ISKCON. Sometimes you'll find that Prabhupada would give two names, the same name to two different devotees. Rabindranath Swarup fell to the floor to offer obeisances, but he didn't rise up. Instead, he began crawling on his hands and knees towards Prabhupada. Rabindra usually had a cavalier manner, enhanced by a handsome face, long tousled hair, and a beard. But now he was wretched and sobbing and crazy. He crawled toward Prabhupada, who sat but 2 steps off of the floor on the simple red wood dais. Prabhupada looked at him with compassion. "Come here, my boy." Rabindra crawled up the steps and placed his bushy head on Prabhupada's lap. Moved, the devotees watched as Prabhupada stroked Rabindra's head, and the boy cried and cried. "What's wrong, my son? You don't have to be so unhappy." Rabindra bawled out. "I want," he sobbed, "to reach God directly, without anyone in between." Prabhupada continued to pat and stroke the boy's head. "No, you continue to stay with us if possible. Don't be a crazy fellow." Rabindra's weeping subsided, and Prabhupada continued speaking both to Rabindra and the emotion-struck group in the crowd. "I am an old man," he said. "I may die at any moment. But please, you all carry on this Sankirtan movement. You have to become humble and tolerant. As Lord Chaitanya says, be as humble as a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. You must have enthusiasm and patience to push on this Krishna-conscious philosophy." So Prabhupada was not planning to lecture. He simply wanted to take part in the last kirtan before he was leaving. But after this incident, he was inspired to inspire the entire group that this is a movement, and you have to stay within this movement and remain humble and tolerant. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, "Trinada Pisuni Chena, Karor Ivasi Hishnuna, Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari." That if we want to continue chanting Hare Krishna continuously, Kirtaniya Sadahari, we have to do so in a humble state of mind, thinking himself lower than the straw in street. One should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Now this aspiration to approach the Lord directly, this is also present in the Christian religion, which was very prominent in America at that time. The Catholic Church had a system of popes and bishops and priests, and the worshippers would take recommendation, take advice through this line of teachers. And then some of the Christians, the Protestants, many different types of Protestants, meaning they were protesting against this, that they didn't want people in between them and God. They wanted to have a one-on-one direct relationship with God. So here we have the first representation, and Prabhupada calls it impersonalism, because we knew nothing of Krishna until Srila Prabhupada came along. Even though so many people were reading and studying Bhagavad Gita, no one was teaching that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's only by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, the spiritual master, that we understand who Krishna is. So he is called the transparent, the medium. He doesn't want worship. He doesn't want respect. He's simply teaching us how to worship and respect the Supreme Lord. But those who were protesting, such as this crazy fellow Ravindra Swarup, he didn't want Prabhupada in between himself and Krishna. But what did he know of Krishna without Srila Prabhupada? Simply a crazy fellow. Suddenly, Ravindra's tears were gone. He jumped up, dejectedly stood, hesitating for a moment, and then hurried out the door, banging it behind him. That was his the finale of the big drama that he had caused here. Ravindra Swarup's dramatic exit from Krishna consciousness shocked the devotees. Prabhupada sat still and continued speaking to them gravely, asking them to stick together and push on the movement for their own benefit and for others. Whatever they had learned, he said, they should repeat. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that they were part of a preaching mission, a movement. They were together, not just for good times and good vibrations. They had a loving obligation to Swamiji and Krishna. So at this time also, in America, because of the counterculture that had developed amongst the youth at that time, they were born to parents who had survived World War II. America had won the war. It was an affluent country. And these young boys and girls who Prabhupada was attracting, they all came from well-to-do families. They had good educations. They were good-looking. So many good qualities about them. So some of them were just taking part in Krishna consciousness because it was a fun thing to do. Chanting and dancing and nice feasting. Anytime you wanted, you can get free food. But with Prabhupada's seriousness now, they were realizing they might never see Prabhupada again. And what Prabhupada had actually done was started a movement. Now the word movement also was a dangerous word amongst the hippies, that you had to be conformed to something, rules, regulations, someone superior to you, an authority. They were rejecting all of that. But they didn't reject Srila Prabhupada, because Prabhupada started a movement. Where were they moving to? They were moving out of the material world, which is what they wanted. They didn't want the materialism anymore. Back to the spiritual world. And he was giving them a glimpse through this chanting of Hare Krishna and this new lifestyle of Krishna consciousness. So therefore, Prabhupada, although these words are completely taboo amongst the hippies, movements, authorities, discipline, they were all accepting that because they trusted Srila Prabhupada, that he knew something that they didn't know, and he was going to take them successfully back to the spiritual world. Prabhupada returned to his apartment, which soon became chaotic, went into Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada chanted each person. Again, when Prabhupada was personally choosing the names. Later, when Krishna consciousness burgeoned and Prabhupada wasn't able to even personally meet his disciples at the time of initiation,